the Forged and Unbroken podcast.
Nice to hopefully give some credit to folks that deserve it.
Absolutely, man. Now, you've been in the fire service how long?
So I joined as a junior in 1996 or 7. I can't remember exactly. Up in Newcastle County, Delaware.
Yeah.
And joined Wilmington Manor. My grandfather was real impactful in the state. Held every position in the state of Delaware.
Oh, neat. All right.
In the fire service. And to be honest with you, this was a fallback.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a pilot.
Oh, okay.
But my eyesight, coming through my teenage years, kind of took a crap.
Yeah.
And you aren't able to get, back then you weren't able to get a waiver to fly anything in the military. You can today. Lasers now, you can get a medical waiver, but not back when I was looking at it. So enjoyed the volunteer side of things. We're busy up there in Newcastle County. And said, hey, why not?
Yeah.
A couple years later, Howard County came along.
Yeah. What year did you get in?
So I took the test in 2000. Just finished high school. Came down with a couple guys, you know them, Fesmeyer and Anderson.
Yeah, yeah.
And a couple other guys, DeHadaway. And 6 of us came down to the test. And 3 of us got hired.
Awesome.
So,
were you and Billy in the same class?
Yes, and Fez.
And Fez, yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Billy, you know, is now the engine captain at 7.
Yes.
Truck captain at 7. So now, like, together, like, I mean, just good people coming out of that class, man.
Yeah, man, Billy, he's a great dude. So is Fez.
Yeah, yeah.
Love those guys.
That's another good, yeah. Well, yeah, both of them being Delaware boys, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very proud of those dudes.
That's awesome, man. Now, did you got into SO pretty much right out the gate?
From the
right?
get-go. When I was graduating the academy, I got assigned to 10 on the engine. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was an older shift, and I was kind of this young teenager coming in.
Right.
And, you know, when you're young, you think you can do everything. And the older guys called me out on a lot of it. So it was a lot of fun. Good challenge. I was able to get all the classes early on in my career, my first 2 years. I think I had all 7 certifications, the tech level certifications we have to get.
Nice.
Being post 9/11, we had a lot of hazmat stuff coming in.
Sure.
So that was kind of the big catalyst for special ops. When I first got there, it was only 1 truck. So we had the ESV, which had a little bit of everything, but not a lot of anything.
Okay.
And then 9/11 happened. The grant money came flooding in.
Yeah.
And kudos to the leadership at the time, because they saw an opportunity to get the money from the government and expand special operations, expand our capabilities. With that came a lot of training, as well as running a bunch of hazmat calls. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but we had the Republican Mailing Center in the county. And so pretty much from, like, if any mail that came from, was going to George Bush at the time, had to get funneled through this facility.
Oh,
and then that was where all the white powder stuff came in.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it was several times a shift. You're going in and doing sampling of
Sure.
this bogus material most of the time. And sometimes stuff would send a little alarm up on us, and we'd have to investigate it further.
Yeah.
But, man, it was like you're putting a suit on a couple times a shift.
That's crazy.
It was busy. And it's fun. Like,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me, I'm like, yes.
You're getting to do the thing.
And then, you know, as a year goes by, you're still doing a lot of it. You're like, okay, this is kind of getting old. But we had such fun. Stanley Wurzberger, he was another young guy on the shift, so we were like real buddies, and we still are. And we got to do a lot of the work because the old guys were like, just send those young guys in and do all the work. They'll bring the stuff out for us to sample. I'm like, okay, sure. So it was a lot of fun.
That's funny. Looking back now, when I would get detailed into 10 as a firefighter, I remember running some of those calls. And obviously there's nothing much I can do. I'm just supporting, moving equipment around. But I remember standing in parking lots while guys are going in for white powder. You know, some receptionist opened an envelope or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're going in.
It's
That's crazy.
A bunch of bogus stuff most of the time, but
Yeah.
you had to take it credible because the world at the time was
Oh, for sure.
different.
For sure. I mean, there was really the real things happening. The disciplines in SO, Howard has kind of, at least from my impression, you know, because we're well resourced and well funded, but also well trained, and there's people that are deeply ingrained in it. They've always been like requested a lot from other, like, I mean, we just helped out Baltimore City and Anne Arundel and Frederick. Like we're known in the area. We've gone on major deployments. You have to have a pretty high standard of training is my general impression. Like you have to have minimum certifications, which sets up the minimum standard, but I feel like our minimum standard is pretty decent from what I gather. And you can go down a couple different roads in the tech side. So whether you want to like really nerd out on the rope stuff or the hazmat stuff or WMD, whatever the case may be, but everybody at least has to have a basic curriculum, right? Just to be part of the SO team in Howard, correct?
Yes. So we have a lot of folks just like myself that are getting assigned out of the academy.
Yeah.
Back then we were kind of pumping out classes that weren't as big as they are or as frequent as they are now. So the turnover is a little higher now.
Yeah.
But yeah, you had to really dedicate yourself to get all these classes. And they were like, well, pick a couple that you really want to be good at and then try to just be decent in the other ones.
Okay.
I don't really see it that way. I like to try to be as good as I can in all of them, but I also understand I don't know everything.
Yeah, right.
So you try your best. What I've really come to appreciate as I've gotten older is the folks that see a deficiency in an ability somewhere and they make themselves better by trying to improve in that area.
Yeah.
In recent years, a lot of stuff's been flooding because of all the, we've had the 2 Oakland City floods. You've had areas where houses weren't before and now runoff is an issue and things are flooding up. And a lot of folks recognize they're not very good swimmers. We've recently started the rescue swimmer program in Howard County to kind of bridge that gap between the swiftwater side and then the dive team, which, we don't do.
Yeah.
We call for help in that respect. But a lot of folks have really stepped up and accepted the challenge because that's a hard class in itself.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of physical swimming and stuff. So I like the mindset of folks that recognize that they have to try to be as good as they possibly can be. And if they're deficient in something, they kind of work on it, to get better.
Yeah, yeah.
And we got some good examples of that too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Something it kind of piggybacking on that, something else I've appreciated coming in there is you can tell though that everybody wants to hold a high standard across the board and across a lot of curriculums. And at the same time, everybody has their like niche, right? So certain people like really excel at rope or really excel at swift water. And it's cool to watch other people, even if they're in leadership positions and they might be formally a subordinate, they lean on those people like, hey, you're the guru in this. Help me, like walk through me or walk me through this. Which I've always appreciated. You can tell like, no, that's the go-to person. Lean on them, pick their brain. They kind of have the final word on something like that, which I thought was pretty neat.
Yes, it's nice to see that because, we all take off. So you're not going to always – that person's not always going to be on the floor. So you just never know what you're going to get called for, and you understand that. And what I also appreciate is the folks that, like I said, will spend the time to work on those areas that they're not familiar with to get better. The leadership in Special Ops, what we currently have is great. Steve Hardesty, that guy has done more for special operations than anybody I've ever experienced with working there. And I've been there since 2001. And he's a little coarse in his delivery, but that guy's he's got a huge heart. Does a lot of stuff for folks people don't see. And him leading the way, and then John Zauer behind him. Yeah. Like the two of them, it's the dynamic duo, but they get a lot of stuff done.
Sure.
The standard which they hold us to is pretty high, and it's awesome.
The passion, those guys' names have come up a couple times on here, and just the passion and the discipline is just unmatched, which is super awesome.
It was wild because John had never worked in special operations before coming there as the lieutenant. And he has got the mindset and the drive to just, okay, this is my job now. I want to be as good as I possibly can and just take it all in.
Yes.
And it was really neat to see because I remember his first couple shifts and, we're running calls and he's like, well, what's that? And I'm like, hey, you got this. And man, look at him now. Like, guy's a stud.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we worked together at Engine and Squad 1 for a little while. I can't remember if he was driver or like the senior guy there, but he got promoted and then started going down that journey. And it was cool. Yeah, whatever he's getting into, he's 100 miles an hour with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do a quick rabbit hole before we get into the meat and potatoes of this with the hurricane. That cowboy life. So I feel like that's such, when yes, we're all in the fire department, but we have our hobbies and our passions outside of this. Not the same, but similar vein. I grew up doing a lot of farming, animal raising. It's like similar circles. There's some overlap there. And I feel like it's very formative, and there are certain characteristics and certain people and cultures that come out of these circles, and it affects everything that you do. So if you could quickly just talk on that. And you got seriously injured cowboying, and you almost couldn't do this job anymore. So let's spend a couple minutes talking that out.
Okay, so first off, I didn't grow up with horses. I'm from Newcastle County, Delaware. It's a pretty urban area.
Yeah.
I met my wife when I got back from Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. And she's a horse girl.
Yeah.
And pretty awesome at that.
Yeah.
I mean, I admire the shit out of her. And she's been in the horses her whole life. And we got together, and I kind of knew it was going to be serious. Mm-hmm. And she had horses already, but she kept them at where she worked. And then we got serious. She's like, all right, let's buy a farm together. So that's what we did.
Awesome.
We bought the farm, and I started learning to ride horses when we first got together. She's like, let's go for a ride. And I really enjoyed it. I don't love them like she does, but I kind of jumped in with 2 feet when we bought the farm, and I'm like, all right, I want to do something fun. So you're going to laugh at this, but I started bull riding.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's not if you want to continue to work.
Oh yeah, it's hard on your body. I had a lot of friends that got into bull riding.
Yeah. It's and I'm too big. You got to be a little guy for that. So
it takes a toll on your
she's
body,
like,
man.
we're getting married. You're not doing that anymore. And I just started with it, so I wasn't really involved with it too much. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna do the next best thing. I'm gonna learn how to rope.
Yeah.
So met up a local cowboy down where we live, and he gave me a rope, showed me how to swing it. He's like, all right, come back at 5 o'clock, we're practicing. And he's not telling you you're going to ride a horse. He's like, you're working the shoes for us so you can watch.
Yeah, cool.
So I learned and met another guy who helped train my horse. And then I just jumped in with 2 feet. It's a challenge. Team roping was what the event was.
Oh, neat. Okay.
Heading and heeling.
Yeah.
I primarily was heading.
Okay.
So you go out, catch a steer, and turn them left for your partner to rope the back feet.
Yep.
And started doing that for a couple of years, and then start competing in some jackpots. And then eventually amateur rodeos, and I started trying to compete in the PRCA, which is a Professional Rodeo Cowboy Association. Was going every weekend in the summer, going to rodeos, trying to win. Garth Brooks says it best: "You're going to lose more than you'll ever win someday." It's the truth.
That's a tough life, man.
Yeah, they don't pay that many people, and most people go home losers.
Sure.
But it was a challenge in every run, so I enjoyed it. Love the lifestyle.
Yeah.
I was telling you off the air here, when you go to a rodeo that has a good announcer and they do the grand entry and he talks about the flag and the nation and the pride in the country that you hear with that whole Western lifestyle, I loved it.
Yeah.
I still miss it.
Yeah.
I just don't compete anymore.
Yeah, sure.
So I was riding a bunch of horses. We have 8 in our backyard right now, so it's a labor of love for my wife. I kind of cringe when I have to do all the chores.
Yeah, there's no hiding from that, man.
No.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's 0 degrees or 100 degrees. You got to be out there doing it.
Absolutely.
And she's a tough chick, so.
That's awesome.
It's pretty awesome. But yeah, I ended up getting hurt in 2014. I was breaking a colt it was my colt. And my buddy's wife had a horse at the farm where I was keeping the colt because I didn't keep him at my house at the time. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I want to start riding this horse again. And so he's like, would you mind getting on him? He might get a little fresh. I'm like, oh, if he bucks, I'll ride him through it. Well, he didn't do that. He decided to rear and throw himself over into the back of a corner of the fence. And horses don't do that because they don't want to naturally injure themselves. But he jumped over backwards. I came off, and I landed on my shoulder blades with my neck tucked to my chin up against the bottom rail of the fence. And then here comes the horse. And I knew to get your leg over the saddle, because if the saddle comes down and lands between your pelvis, it's just going to split your
Shatter
pelvis.
you, yeah.
So I got my leg over, but I couldn't get out of the way because it was so quick. And the horse landed on top of me and basically had my head tucked between my legs when he landed and folded me in half. And I ended up with a spinal cord injury.
Yeah.
I didn't go to the doctor right away. I toughed it out for a while until finally my hands stopped working and my arms quit working. And I'm like, okay, something's wrong.
Yeah, something's up. Damn.
So ended up getting my spinal fusion, and then I had some nerve injury down in my hands. Mm-hmm. So I had both hands operated on as well.
Wow.
And I missed a total of 7 months of work. I came back as soon as the doctor
That's a pretty good turnaround. That's a very good
It's
turnaround.
way faster than they said I should.
Yeah.
The doctor told me when he saw my image, he wasn't in the ER, the neurologist, he sent my imaging to him. He expected to see a guy laying there paralyzed, and
yeah.
I was trying to eat a sandwich standing up with a C-collar on, and my arm's not working. And the doc says, I told you he's stubborn.
You're right.
So he said, sit down, and he broke the news to me, and then it kind of hit me. And I didn't know if I was going to ever get back to work because my hands wouldn't work.
Oh, I remember when they were lining up trades for you to work and whatnot. I
Yeah.
remember that was a possible theme that we kept hearing, is that this might be career ending.
Yeah, and I was trying to mentally prepare for that.
Yeah, that's tough.
And the other thing is it puts all the work on my wife.
Sure.
So that was a big kind of a kick in the okay, don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I went back to rodeoing for a few more years, actually till COVID, and then the rodeos kind of stopped and my horse aged out of competition. Okay. Still have him, but he's too old and too slow.
Yeah.
And I can't afford a new horse of that caliber. So
yeah, sure. That kind of sealed it.
Yeah.
How was that repair process? What was your mindset? What did that do to your psyche there for a little bit? How'd you get through that?
Well, I was in denial for a while. I was like, I'll be fine. Mm-hmm. And I actually came back to work before my hands were operated on. Okay. And my hands felt like they were in a vise sometimes, or it would go to sometimes like you're holding over a hot stove for no random reason at all. I mean, just
damage.
Nerve damage sucks.
Yeah.
But the neck was good. They said the neck was fine, and then he sent me to a specialist for my hands, and they fixed them. So I had to go back off for a little while, but missed a total of 7 months.
Wow. I say that's a quick turnaround, man. That's
that's
pretty baller. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. All right, let's do a hard switch, and I want to get into the hurricane.
Sure.
Because I know there are some amazing stories coming out of this. Now, let's first split out some of the different areas of response. And what I mean is, before we get into the actual hurricane, you have multiple elements just out of our department, right? So there's USAR, and you're there on HART. Most people don't really understand the concept or aren't even maybe aware of the role that you fill with that. So if you could, can you explain the two differences? Because we always hear USAR going out and helping out with these deployments. What are these assets and how are they different?
Sure. Well, I'll just cover first what the HART team actually is.
Yeah.
HART is an acronym. It stands for Helicopter Aquatic Response Team. It's a joint venture between the Maryland Army National Guard and 4 counties. It's Baltimore County, who's the original guys that started it, Howard, Montgomery, and Hartford. It's about 22 people is the tryout process for it. Mm-hmm. It's run by Mike Berna, retired captain out of Baltimore County.
Okay.
He's now Hartford County Special Ops.
Nice.
And a couple guys like John Zowers of leadership, Mike Chesnikowski, who's Baltimore County, Mike Stream, and Brandon Watkins. They're the leadership group of the HART team. And what it is we are the rescue swimmers on a UH-60 Black Hawk that the Guard flies.
Nice.
The way we are deployed is we go through EMAC requests. Are you familiar with what EMAC is?
I've heard of it.
Okay, so it's Emergency Management Assistance Compact. Mm-hmm. Basically, any department, county, state in the country, they put out a request for assistance. It could be for a wildfire response. They need wildland firefighters. Mm-hmm. Could be for recovery efforts from storms and stuff like that. In this case, a state has to request a Black Hawk or with a rescue capability.
Gotcha.
So that's where HART comes in. They've been around since 2008. It all stemmed from Hurricane Katrina, where helicopters were doing rescues from people, in New Orleans and in the area surrounding that. And like they're having to chop through roofs, they're having to break in stuff. And the crews did great work, but they weren't rescue guys.
Yeah.
So, in the after action, like what can we do to provide that response? So some states started talking and say, well, why don't we get the rescue guys and train them up to fly with us so that when we have these scenarios, they can effect the rescue better because they have the knowledge base for that. So we specialize in inland water, so like swiftwater rescue. We'll do all kinds of different scenarios that a lot of the local helicopter assets won't do. Mm-hmm. We'll do water insertions. We'll do tree picks, which is always interesting. If somebody's hugging a tree and thing.
Yeah.
We'll actually lower down through the tree.
Oh,
with
wow.
a cable. Yeah. It's neat because the helicopter actually gets over top and it blows the canopy open.
Okay.
And the crew chiefs will kind of pick a spot and drop us down through.
No kidding.
And it's interesting because you get kind of beat up with the branches, but like you also got to really worry about the cable wrap too.
For sure.
Like all that stuff that goes into play.
Yeah.
Where a lot of agencies won't even attempt it. Mm-hmm. These Army guys are awesome.
That's
we'll
awesome.
give it a go.
I love it.
So that's one of them. We'll do cars in moving water, roofs, balconies. We do night ops and do it all at night too.
Great.
So, and we don't use NVGs. We have the ability to use them, but there's a little spotlight under the aircraft, and we take flashlights down. So
Gotcha.
we're able to do stuff like that. So they use our expertise in the rescue world to kind of help with the being safer than what could possibly happen with somebody who's not trained in that environment.
For sure. Yeah.
It's all funded through the state. So with HART, MDEM, Maryland Department of Emergency Management, we're one of their assets. Mm-hmm. So they can use us in-state or they can shop us elsewhere. Okay. And that's how the Helene response happened.
Okay.
With FEMA, so I was on a state USAR team, Maryland Task Force 2, which is no longer around. They got defunded. But we fell under EMAC. With FEMA, that's the federal level. Yeah. So they work for FEMA. So FEMA will plan ahead, will pre-deploy a lot of assets with anticipation of something happening. They are all FEMA employees when they are deployed.
Got it, yeah.
So they're paid by FEMA. Mm-hmm. When you request the HART team through EMAC, we work for whoever hires us. It's like eBay for rescue, John always says.
That's a good analogy.
There's a bid out there, and then a couple teams may respond and say, like, we cost this much if you want this, or another state may say we cost this much, and they go, okay, well, this guy can provide this and this and this, and they can stay this long. We'll take them.
Nice.
And then they sign the paperwork and deploy
no kidding.
to wherever that is. So
that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Now, our USAR guys, that is, since we're not Task Force 2, what are we under?
They're Task Force 1.
They're Task Force 1
That's a
now.
federal team out of Montgomery County.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
And there's quite a few folks now on the department that are involved with that.
Yeah.
They've been deployed a bunch.
Yeah.
And since I think they got on like 5 years ago, and a lot of them have 4 or 5, maybe even 6 deployments now.
Sure.
And they're assuming some leadership roles on the team too.
Yes. Yeah.
So what's kind of unique, much like the HART was, HART for a long time was just Baltimore County and the Guard. Mm-hmm. And Maryland Task Force 1 was Montgomery County with FEMA.
Yeah.
Since then, like they expanded HART in 2017. The request for Who Wants to Join came out. And I don't know when we got involved with FEMA, but it was probably 5 years ago that they expanded to other jurisdictions and took a lot of Howard guys on.
Yeah. Wow.
And they're doing a lot of good things there too. So
awesome.
It's pretty cool to see the departments supporting us that way.
For sure. Yeah. No, that's amazing. Such a cool asset and like awesome people, and just the stories you hear, them coming back and the missions that they're accomplishing is pretty amazing. For you, I'll kind of throw up the softball here. 83 people saved. 20 dogs and cats. You flew 29 missions or sorties using the vernacular, and over 100 cases of food and water that were deployed out just from your team on HART. that you operate with.
Yes.
Correct?
So we got rostered up to go the day before the storm came. They kind of told you who's first up. And so it was myself as the Howard County representative. But we had two other rescue techs on the bird. Mike Chesnikowski, he's the lieutenant in Baltimore County. He was the HART team leader. So he's in charge of me. And the other rescue tech was Tim Beatty. He's a firefighter in Montgomery County down on the river team.
Okay.
They all have over 20 plus years on the job too.
Awesome.
So a lot of seniority there.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool because Zauer was in charge of the team at that time because Mike Burnham was out of state, and they have a way of rostering people. It's a red and a blue team. We alternate months who's up first.
Yeah. Okay.
They take in consideration how many deployments people have had. Now, HART's not something that goes every hurricane.
Sure.
It's a special storm when you need a helicopter.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they've had, I think, 3 out-of-state deployments in the past 5 years, and then this current one. We've had a couple in-state stuff happen that we've been up for, but this was, these out-of-state ones don't happen very often.
Yeah, sure.
And so we got the who was up first, and then I knew I was going, so I had kept my bags packed. And then they told us to report in the day the storm came through. And we showed up at the hangar at 5 o'clock at night. And the hope was we were going to get out of there at 6 and get down to Salisbury, North Carolina, which is a Army base in the middle of the state. Well, the storm's still coming through. It was getting dark, and there was a huge rain band with winds coming through Virginia, which means we got to fly IFR the whole way down, which is instrument flight rules.
Yeah.
Basically, your head's down. You're not looking out the window. You're looking at your instruments.
Yeah.
The flight crew was coming off a day I've already worked. So the Army they're full-time Army guys, and they show up for work in the morning, and they can fly so many hours, and they can work so many hours before they have to come off the books.
Yeah.
So had we left that night, if we could have flown through the weather, we probably wouldn't be able to do anything until the next morning.
Gotcha.
Because of the mandatory time off that the pilots have and the crew have to have.
Okay.
So we decided to scrub that night and show up at 6 a.m. the next day, which was Saturday. And we left it, we showed up at 6, loaded the helicopter, and it was loaded to the brim.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. You couldn't see the guy on the other side of the cabin because the amount of equipment between everybody was just massive. And we had to carry some stuff down for the Chinook guys because the Chinook, or the 47 guys, we'll refer to them as, they had gone down before the storm to render assistance.
Okay.
To be there. And so we had to carry a couple things down for them. So we flew down there. It's a 3-hour flight to Salisbury. Got in probably 10:30 in the morning. The pilots go off and they get briefed for how this is going to operate. The crew chiefs and the 3 of us techs were getting everything unloaded, dumping all the stuff in the firehouse, getting the cabin ready for rescue. And we got to meet up with the MD HART guys, and they was like, "Hey, don't worry. Don't be in a rush. There's a lot of work to do." And we're like, "Yeah, okay."
Yeah.
And they're like, "No, we're being serious." And they weren't lying.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but at this point, you're probably getting a decent amount of intel that how serious things are getting, right?
So what's kind of neat about the HART stuff is, in this case, we had to fly 45 minutes into the action area from the airport.
Okay.
So we were staying in Salisbury, North Carolina, which you couldn't tell anything was wrong there. It was like another day. But you fly 45 minutes to the west, just west of Hickory, and you get into the mountains, and that's where the 24 inches of rain fell.
Yeah.
And that's where all the flooding was, and the landslides and the devastation. So crew got their briefing. They came out to us and said, "All right, we got our first mission." So we launch out of there. We had to wait to get the radios flashed and stuff too. So we launch out of there and head to our first mission, which was just south of Chimney Rock, Batcave area.
Okay.
It was a report for 8 people, and it was going to be a hoist. The first mission, that for whole first day, the weather was iffy. So it wasn't bright and sunny. You had cloud cover up in the mountains. and rain at sometimes.
Sure.
And we're flying in there, and we're like, oh crap, this weather's not looking good. I hope it doesn't like make us scrub the mission. So flying around, get to this location where these folks are, and we see there's 8 people with 2 dogs is what the report was. Tim and myself went down because when we have a group of people like that, it's much easier to have one guy manage the people and the other person manage the actual hoist operation of it.
Okay, yeah.
So the crew chief can work with the guy who's loading in the basket and the other guy is sending them people.
Got it.
Keep in mind with the scenario down there, people called for help, and if looking back now, they might not have gotten help for a few days.
Yeah.
So you're calling 911 or whoever you can get a hold of to get you some help, but you don't know when help's coming.
Yeah.
It's not like 911 where you're like, all right, I called 911 and in less than 10 minutes, a fire engine and an ambulance show up.
Right.
So people had time to grab their bags and get what they thought they needed to leave. So we get overhead and we're down there, and there's 8 people and 2 dogs, and 4 guys from what was it called? Rocky Mount, North Carolina Water Rescue Group.
Okay.
And those are the ones who called it in apparently. And we meet up with those guys, and those guys had inserted themselves in that area that the previous day when the storm was coming through. They had been hiking over 24 hours to get to these people in dry suits, and they had 1 bottle of water each. That's it.
Holy shit.
These guys were really spent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they put in a lot of work to get to these folks. So Tim's managing the folks and the couple dogs, and we're loading them up and sending them up to the helicopter. And we told the guys, like, look, you're not walking out here. We got you. Mm-hmm. So we loaded the 8 victims, and then those 4 guys were the last ones to go. We made 2 trips. Okay. So they left Tim and I here on the ground and say, hey, well, we're going to take the load to the LZ, because there was like portable shelters like set up
throughout.
Like the police academy was one, high school was another one in that area. So we send them up, and then the last 4 we did was the rescuers. But one of my concerns was the dogs, because that's one thing we never train with. Like we practice rescuing ourselves.
What kind of animal you're getting?
Well, how they're going to react to the cabin. Sure. And put them in the basket. Are they going to try to jump out of the basket? And it's kind of funny, but every time that a dog would get in the basket, I would stand directly under the basket, just waiting for them to jump out. It never happened, but I was just nervous. I'm like, sure. I don't want to see a dog die in front of me.
What kind of environment are you dropping into? So obviously they can't get out. Are they stranded in water? Like, I'm seeing people in trees, people in roofs. Like, what was this first one like?
So we never did a water insertion.
Okay.
We were working up on mountains and valleys.
Got it.
Where maybe water was at one time. These particular 8 people in Mission 1, their whole area was cut off. Mm-hmm. Their roads were gone. We could see it coming in. Like, the bridge was gone, the roads were gone, and these people were really isolated. And that's the environment we worked in the whole time. I'd never put my dry suit on. I mean, Tim got wet crossing a river to help somebody, but it wasn't,
it's not like we weren't standing, moving water that you're messing with.
So we were up in the mountains. These folks, we couldn't land anywhere, so it was definitely a hoist mission for us.
Yeah.
And we're using the Coast Guard basket the most.
Okay.
So I didn't really cover what we do, but with HART, we have a couple rescue adjuncts that we use. Okay. We have what they call a strop, which goes under your arms and between your legs.
Yep.
And it's one of the quicker ways of getting somebody up.
I've seen those, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
You can't really put old people with suitcases in them.
Sure.
It won't work. So we use the Coast Guard basket.
Okay.
We also have a litter for people that are, incapacitated, can't move, and can't fit in the basket. We can wrap them up on a litter and put them in a bag and hoist them up that way.
Gotcha.
So those are the adjuncts that we're going to typically use.
Okay.
Of all the hoist rescues we did, we only used the strop 3 times.
Okay.
It's our SOP to go down with it, and we had 2 of them down there. So the 2 rescuers that were from Rocky Mount, the last 2 to go up, they rode in the strop with one of us each time.
Gotcha.
But everything else is in the basket. But they're bringing their suitcases, their dogs. This one lady, she didn't tell us, but she had a cat tucked in her shirt. So Tim's walking her over, and this cat pops his head out. And I'm like, oh, this is not going to go good.
Yeah, right.
Because it's loud and it's windy.
For sure.
This cat started flipping out, and lady couldn't hold it. She had a harness on it. Tim grabs the cat, and he's trying to hold on to it, and the thing is just tearing him up. And so he lets go, and it takes off into the woods. And I felt bad because I'm like, the lady just lost her cat. And that was the only animal we lost for the whole deployment. But I felt bad. And I felt bad for Tim. Was like, I don't know how he held on to it as long as he did.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. But so that was got those folks out, and then the 4 rescuers we took out of there as well.
Right out the gate, you got 8,
right out the gate.
8 and 4.
Yeah. And it was really cool because they said here's gonna be work. And when I started on HART, I just wanted to go on one deployment. Like, just give me one good one, and and then maybe I'll make a rescue with a hoist, and that be like the highlight of it. I'm like, oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, right.
And then we get down there for this storm, and it was
just one
after another, and I'm like, wow.
So, let's talk about some of the humanitarian side of it. So, I mean, when you're going down to like literally doing pickoffs, like what condition is the environment in, and what condition are the people themselves in? Because like you said, they're stranded for possible days. You can't necessarily rely on food and water potentially. You hear all these stories of people being injured, stranded. Mm-hmm. Let's kind of meld those two together. Like the environment meets what the humanitarian side of it. And so what are you seeing and dealing with as you find these people and you're bringing them up?
Well, they were very grateful, first and foremost.
Sure.
I mean, we've never met anybody. I really feel bad for what these folks have to go through, because I don't think a lot of them at the time understood the severity of their situation.
Yeah.
From the air, we could see everything.
Yeah.
We could see you're not going to be there's no road for a couple miles.
Nobody's coming to get you.
Yeah. And if you don't leave now, you're probably not going to get a chance to get out of there.
Yeah.
So convincing folks like, hey, if you stay, we may not be able to come back and get you. Mm-hmm. A lot of folks like us, the men, they sent their wives and their kids to the shelter, and they tried to stay back, and they're like, we're going to hold out. And we'd give them a case of water if we had it. That's a couple days later.
Okay.
But at the time, they were just like, thank you for getting us out of here. And like some of the places, they're not going to be able to go back for probably months. Right. And depending on how isolated that road is, it's probably not a priority to get fixed. And it's not just the asphalt that's gone. The whole base is gone.
Yeah, you're not just laying new asphalt.
Yeah, you got to build a whole base, and the river's moved. That's the other thing is like where the river was at one point in time, the new river is 30, 40, 50, 100 feet to the left or right of it.
Wow.
So you have new riverbeds.
Yeah.
So that changes everything. Most of the roads are along the rivers, in the valleys, and there's little hills, houses up on these hills and these little cuts, and they're very isolated. And trying to tell folks like, hey, you're not going to get out of here. And some folks knew, and they were smart, and they take us out of here, please. But it was really, it's really isolated, man. It's unlike some of the other stuff where I was down in Katrina, and that was a city underwater,
Right.
But the water does recede, and there'll still be roads because it's just flood water.
Yeah, right.
It's not the power of the moving water.
Yeah,
and up in the mountains of where this area was, it's 24 inches of rain. They're in every mountain in the valley is a funnel, so all the water just compounds. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So everything down in the valley is just washed away.
Yeah.
So it was pretty dire for a lot of those towns in there.
Yeah, for sure.
Our second mission on day one, we were called to get a paralyzed person out of there. And the problem is you don't have addresses to follow. That's tough. Like, on the fire service, we give an address, we go look for the house where it should be and see the address on the side of the house. From the air, and everything's wooded.
Is this like a GPS location?
That's exactly what they were doing.
Okay.
So the pilots, man, those guys are awesome. But they were getting grid coordinates and flying to those, and you can hear them on the intercom telling us, all right, you're, 0.5, 0.4, 0.3, 0.2,
Okay.
0.1 should be below us. Well, they insert down there, and I go to the house that's where that's at, and it's not a paralyzed person. It's a guy like our age living by himself, and he was pretty distraught. I'm like, hey, is your neighbor paralyzed? Do you know any of your neighbors? And he was like, yeah, they're down over there. Well, I said, do you need to get out of here too? I'm just like, there's no road. The road washed away off the mountain.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. And so called the helicopter. I said, hey, I'm going to send one up to you. When he gets up there, have him point out the house. I told him what he's supposed to do. Tell you guys. And so we go to this other house. They pick me up, come back in a helicopter. We slide over, a couple hundred yards. They drop me back down. There was a girl who was not mobile, but she was a young girl.
Okay.
And the parents didn't want to leave. I'm like, well, what's your plan? We'll figure it out. I said, okay. I said, do you know where this elderly paralyzed person is? Yeah, it's up the mountain. It should be a house up on the left or something. So, okay, I'm leaving. Back up, fly up to there.
Man.
And that guy waved us off. So I don't know what the deal was with that one. So we ended up just getting that one guy and flying him down to the shelter.
So out of 83 people picked off, how many people would you say just you would try to make access to, and they're like, no, we're good?
I think the most of the stuff we were sent to, we got people out of there that were.
So it's not like double or anything, or
depends,
as many.
It depends. The elderly always wanted out. There's a lot of Airbnbs down there or rental homes.
Yeah.
So folks are in these houses that they are not familiar with the region. They probably only have a day's worth of food because they're on vacation. You know what I mean? They don't.
Oh, so a lot of these were guests, like vacationers.
I had a couple that were, yeah.
No kidding. Okay.
For example, our last mission on day one was for a family of 5. And if you look on the Maryland Guard Facebook page, they have a video, and it kind of shows us approaching a house. It's the one that's got lights on.
Okay.
It had a whole house generator.
Oh, nice.
So,
All right.
like, these folks, come to find out, we're from Southern Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and it's right on the side of a mountain. So we're doing they're inserting me in the driveway, and we knew we were going to do basket hoist. So I come in, open the door. I said, hey, I'm Chris from the Maryland Guard. I'm here to get you out of here. And the father comes up. He goes, thank you very much. Shook my hand. I said, how many do you have? And he said, we have 5. So I confirmed with the aircraft, and it was a father, a young 3-year-old son, a mother, and a 5-month-old, and then a 12-year-old daughter. Mm-hmm. So I told him, I said, okay, here's the deal. I want you to stay in the house for a second. I said, you two, the father and son, you're going first. Baby and mom are going second, and the daughter and I will go up last. We'll do 3 hoists here. Well, it was getting dark. It was starting to rain, and it was windy, and we're in this narrow opening they're trying to hoist from. And we had a little issue with the cable getting fouled with the canopy because the rotor wash off the hill kind of acts differently than it would if it was on a flat ground.
Sure. Okay.
So,
yeah.
It made the hoist a little difficult. It made
Okay.
the crew chiefs, I don't know how he put it in there.
Dudes.
Yeah, I want to make sure I shout those guys out because man, they did a hell of a job. But yeah, sent father and son up, then mom and baby, and then I clipped in with the 2 auxiliary hook, and I rode up with the basket with the daughter in the basket.
Okay.
And we took them to the airport because they wanted to go back home to South Florida.
Sure.
Like you have a choice. You can go to this high school, you can go to this police academy, or you can go to Hickory Airfield. And we knew this was our last mission of the day because we were maxed out on hours, and it was dark. So they chose the airport. But,
yeah, we're out of here.
Yeah, they were so thankful to get out of here. I'm like, well, yeah, but
5-month-old baby coming up.
yeah. Well, it's we had a few kids in that stuff, and the mom, she was really concerned about the hearing with the kid. I said, well, do any of your kids have like Beats headphones or something? And he's like, oh yeah, the boy does. So he put them on the baby.
Oh,
she was all worried about the baby hearing.
Yeah,
the baby never woke up. Slept
like
the
nice
whole
white
time.
noise,
Yeah. And I mean, it's loud as can be in the back of the helicopter, and the baby slept through it all.
That's amazing.
But yeah, it's That was day one, and we flew. We got a total of 17 people on day one with 2 pets.
Wow.
And that was, only flying a half day. We got back to the airfield after dark at Salisbury, and we went to dinner. So we come back at the end of the day. We land. The crew chiefs, they tie down the aircraft. We clean the cabin out, and the pilots go in for a debrief from the pilot side of things, like what you guys do, confirm all the totals are good with the operation center, and then we meet in the van and go to our hotel.
Okay.
We went to dinner late that night. We went to dinner late every night, but
Sure.
That's where we debrief over dinner, kind of talk about what went wrong, what went well, what do we want to do moving forward.
Good.
The one thing which turned out to be, the pace was just as steady for the next 2 days. The pilots and the crew chiefs, and just the flight crew in general, that's a lot of stress on them.
Absolutely.
I mean, Will, who's our team leader, he's the warrant officer with the Guard. He's the HART team leadership guy. He flew every mission of every day.
Wow.
And it was like the guy's a stud pilot.
Yeah.
And even other pilots as well. Brian, who flew us down and flew day one, and then Terry, he's a 47 trained guy. He was already down there. He used to be a HART team leader at one point in time. He flew down there with the 47s before the storm. Then he heard that we were coming. He's like, all right, when you guys get down here, I'm going to come fly the missions with you guys. So he flew days 2, 3, and 4 with us, and then he had to leave.
Okay.
Brian jumped back in the cockpit for day 5, and then we had a mandatory day off because the aircraft it was a hard stop for maintenance.
Yeah, okay.
Because we had been flying so many hours, like they had to do some
PM,
stuff.
basically.
And then the rest of the days we had a guy named Nico come down and be our pilot, our second pilot.
Okay.
But the crew chiefs were Steve and Kyle, and they would just rotate who's running the hoist for the day. Like
Gotcha.
left side, right side. Hoist is on the right side of the cabin. So if they were flying the right side, they were the hoist operator. The other guy was running the cabin with Mike Shesnikowski, who stayed in. Tim and I would switch off. Like, okay, you're primary out the door for this mission, and then we'd switch. Next mission, I would go, and then Tim would go.
Got it.
A couple of times it worked out that we both had to be down when Tim was up first.
Yeah.
So it worked
Just
out.
the amount of work.
Worked out for me,
Yeah,
but
cool.
like he did day 2, it picked right back up where we left off on day 1. It was we're listening to the intercom, and you'd be leaving the rescue area and flying to the drop off one of these LZs, or this case was like North Henderson High. And as you're coming in, they would say, okay, 724, which was our helicopter number, stand by for follow on. And you're like, oh man, we dropped these guys off. We got another one.
Yeah.
And it just constantly kept happening. So,
Jeez.
I mean, you'd be flying in like, okay, just catching your breath. That was fun. This is cool. Oh, we got another one pending. So as soon as we could get those folks off, we're flying to a new set of coordinates.
Yeah.
And I told you before we went on, we were flying in an area from the west boundary was Asheville, the eastern boundary was Hickory, and up the Tennessee border all the way down to South Carolina, basically.
Wow.
Large area.
That's a huge stretch.
But in a helicopter, you can cover it in 20 minutes, 30 minutes
Oh,
sometimes.
wow, okay.
So, like, you're flying as the crow flies, not
Yeah, for sure.
probably take you 3 hours by
mountain
car.
roads, right?
So, you're popping over ridges, and some places you'd have to travel 20 minutes to your next mission. But I'm not exactly sure how the Guard was getting all these missions. I was obviously coming from the state.
Yeah.
But I don't know how they were screening those calls and stuff. They just like, hey, here's the next one. It's
it.
4 people in a hoist, or 2 people, and you're going to insert. Our day 2 started off, we landed in an area called Bat Cave. So we spent a lot of time in the Chimney Rock Bat Cave area.
Okay.
That valley, saw a lot, extensive damage.
Yeah.
And North Carolina HART, they were in a 60. I think they had like 6 helicopters flying for North Carolina HART.
Wow.
And I think total they had over 500 some rescues between all the platforms.
Damn.
Yeah. And they were flying Blackhawks as well as the 72s, which is Lakota. It's a smaller platform.
Gotcha.
You can't carry as many people, and maybe 2 or 3 people in the back. That's it.
Okay.
Well, we can.
How many can you carry in the Blackhawk?
I think the most we had that was 11.
Wow.
In addition to the 7 of us.
Oh, on top of that. Wow. So you're like, what, almost 20 people in this bird.
Basically, so how we are connected, there's the crew chief seats behind the pilots. We'd put people in those. And then we had 2 actual seats that were in the cabin. But everything else, we had seatbelts on the floor.
Okay.
So as we're sending people up, they're seatbelt onto the floor, just putting something over their waist so that they don't fall out. And then when we have what they call like orca straps, like retract-a-lock fall protection.
Okay, yeah.
There's a couple of them in the floor. So we would come in a cabin sometimes and be standing up, bent over, and just clipping into our harnesses to the aircraft because it's really important that everybody stays connected so you don't have anybody fall out the door.
Sure.
Especially while we're in a hover hoist configuration because that whole side of the aircraft is open.
Right.
And so we don't want the victims falling out or the stuff like that. So that's how we were securing people. We're just packing it full as much as we could. And, the Black Hawk is such a powerful platform. It's not like a civilian helicopter where you can only carry a couple of people and you're overloaded.
Yeah.
This thing's got some power. What you have to understand, though, is you're up in the mountains. So you have this thing called density altitude. So the higher you go, and depending on the meteorological conditions, your ability to lift a certain weight decreases the higher you go.
Yeah. Okay.
So like the pilots have to watch that, especially in a hover, because the helicopter works its hardest in a hover.
Okay.
It burns the most fuel.
Yeah. All right.
It's way more efficient flying forward.
Okay.
So the longer they're on station, you have to really watch your fuel because there's not gas stations everywhere. You might have to fly 20 minutes to get to the airport.
Yeah.
But those missions loading people in and stuff, it's a challenge once you start getting more and more folks in. There were a few times, like I said, day 1, mission 1, we landed in a bat cave. North Carolina Hart guys were loading up their Black Hawk, but they're on the ground. So there was an LZ that they made right in the middle of a cow pasture, and where the people in that were cut off there all met there. Okay. And so we sent our helicopter out like with 2 trips worth of people, and I think North Carolina made 3 trips in that situation. And we just were loading people into each one. It didn't matter.
Just getting people out of that.
If there's room in there. A lot of people with dogs and bags. The one thing we noticed with the dogs was, and it's completely obvious to any dog owner, they're going to get scared when they hear the noise and the wind. But we'd carry the dog for the owner and keep the face facing the owner right next to you.
Oh, nice.
And they typically would relax. There's a few that kind of
got interesting, squirmy. Man. Just that little touch. This is little things you pick up on to make operations easier. Yeah.
That was our first mission, and then started doing some more hoists. I know Tim went next, and he had a family of 3 up in this valley. It was a husband and wife and a really small child. So he went out the door and sent the mom up and kid, and apparently he said dad was scared to death. Like I guess didn't like heights, and he said I'm going to put this on you, and he said this guy had a look of like super severe terror in his eyes.
For sure.
And he goes, I'll never forget that guy's face. And Tim got those guys up and came up with him. And the guy was crying when he got him in the helicopter. And Tim reassured him, like, hey, buddy, you're safe. We got you.
Yeah.
But, people, some folks understand the direness of their situation.
Yeah.
And you just don't know when they're going to go back and see their house again. It could be next week. It could be 3-4 months from now. So they're leaving their life,
Absolutely.
So the humanity side of things, you really have to kind of like take a step back and say, man, if this was me, how would I handle this?
For sure.
And then you also understand why some folks express themselves that way, or
Absolutely.
Some folks were smiling. They're like, oh, this is cool. This is one way of getting off the mountain,
Yeah, right.
But it was interesting.
Did anybody talk about that? As they're leaving their homes, some people, like you said, they may not be coming back to a home. Maybe it's washed out. If they do have a home, they're leaving behind all their belongings in an environment that's essentially been destroyed with no infrastructure. So you think about just little things like you come back a month later to a fridge full of rotten food and your clothes are moldy, like just things you would never even think you would have to consider. Like what's going through their minds? How are they unloading on you all with that?
I think a lot of folks, it hadn't sunk in yet. Like,
Yeah.
because I don't think they even knew. Like, we didn't know.
There's no concept.
Yeah, you have no idea what the recovery plan is. I mean, if you see these little mountain 2-lane roads that probably don't even have a stripe down the center of it. It's just a paved road, and it's serving a community of 40 people. Like, what's the priority of that getting fixed anytime soon?
For sure.
So
when you have major highways and interstates washed out.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you asked me that like 20 years ago, like I would look at it differently.
Yeah.
You know, you have a very nice house here. I have my home, and you think about, put yourself in those shoes. You're like, man, everything you work for, everything that's important to you, is it going to be the same when you get back to it?
Yeah.
You know, and that's I don't think it hit everybody right away.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have probably tried to stay.
Yeah, right.
I would probably regret that decision, you know, a couple days later, you know, and then be stuck. But yeah, that's the sad part of that whole deal. Seeing how bad it was for those folks, and you know, not everybody is wealthy, you know, and what they have is what they have, and it was kind of tough, you know, to think about it that way.
Sure. A quick rabbit hole, did that change any of your psyche coming home? And what I mean is, people, I'm sure, will prioritize things differently. You hear people that go through maybe some major life change or through an illness or sickness, or maybe there's a death in the family, and they get introspective and they start to reprioritize things in their life. Like, all these things that I thought were important are actually not important. This is now what's important. And it took this event for me to realize that. You having served this community and then coming back home after these missions, was there anything like that for you?
Well, first off, I think, me personally, I'd be screwed if that happened to where I live, because I have 8 horses in my backyard, a couple of dogs and cats and a chicken still. But I'm like, what would I do with all this stuff?
Yeah.
You know, but I also realize that, you know, there's the humanity of the situation with what I would plan on taking if I didn't have to worry about horses.
Yeah.
I know what I would do.
Yeah, right.
But I hope I never have to make that decision.
For sure.
But yeah, I don't know. I know. I was just glad to have the opportunity to be there. I'm grateful that you know, the department supports us.
Yeah.
Like they do, and you know, you think about timing is everything in the world. I think you just got to be in the right place, right time. The fact that I even got on this team back in 2017, when it was just a right place, right time. I hate to go backwards, but
no, it's all right.
I was sitting in John Zauer's office because he's at 10, and we're just BSing around, and Chief Hardesty calls, and he's like, "Hey, I don't know if you're interested, but this has been stuck up in EMA for a while, but there's some kind of helicopter team that's looking for swimmers. You interested?" He goes, "I need to know right now because it closes in an hour." And John's like, "Huh? Helicopter? What are you looking for?" And he said, "This is what it was." None of us knew what the team was. So John looks at me and goes, "Hey, you want to fly a helicopter and do stuff?" And I'm like, "Do rescue stuff?" I'm like, "Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Sign me up." He's like, "Well, you got to get your letter together in the next 20 minutes. So we're really quick typing things up. And that's the only reason I found out about this.
Okay.
Last minute, happened to be sitting at his desk.
You had an hour.
Yeah. I think I was the only one in the firehouse at the time because I think I was the pod driver that day. Mm-hmm. And so we're filling this stuff out. And like nobody else that was working that day was eligible or wanted to do it because nobody knew what it was. Yeah. So, you know, just...
And fast forward a couple of years, and now here you are.
Yeah, it's just wild that things all worked out like they did. Yeah, I think looking back, my goal moving forward with the team is to share the experience, and hopefully the next time our guys go out the door, whether it's next week or next year or whenever it is, they're better prepared for it. We have our shortcomings on the team, and comms is a huge part of that. Okay. So you would think in today's day and age we'd be able to talk to the helicopter and stuff, but there's also that civilian and military bridge too. Okay, what works with their equipment may not work with ours. So basically how we were working this out was Tim and myself were on a direct channel, like we use like the RINS channel at work, Alpha 15. Yeah. And Ski, was sitting up there, and he had the ICS cable to talk to the crew, and then he had the other cable he could plug in and talk to us. So, and eventually they got me an ICS cable, so I could also hear what was coming in.
Okay.
But Tim was in the dark the whole time. So whenever a mission would come in, I'd point to my ears and say, "Hey, Tim, get ready. I'm going to talk to you." So I'd flip the cable off and say, "Hey, we got a mission. This is what it is. These are the details." And he's like, "Okay." I said, "You're up." So he'd get himself ready. And then I'd go back on the ICS to kind of get me more information. And it's flip back and forth. And then once one of us went out the door, we'd always stay on the direct talk and back and forth to one another.
Okay.
But Ski would switch back and forth if we had to relay something to the crew.
Yeah.
Operationally wise, with the hoist and stuff, that's all hand signals.
Okay.
So we have a set of hand signals, and we can just, as long as we can see the crew chief, he knows what we want.
Yeah, you're good.
But like the details of everything, that was another struggle. When you come down, you're greeted by a group of people. And you don't know really what the situation is. Like, how many do you have? And sometimes, if I got 3, and then somebody else come walking down out of the hills. Like, oh, I got 2 more over here.
Wow.
All right, you got to get here now.
Yeah.
Like, we just show up. Like I said, it could have been 3 days post hurricane. We're still rescuing people out of the hills, but they've been waiting for 3 days.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, wow, here's the helicopter. And the longer we stay on station, the more fuel we burn.
For sure.
And we might not be able to complete the mission if we dilly-dally too long.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of a struggle in getting people motivated on the ground. Like, hey, whatever you got, we're going now.
Yeah, right.
Like, hurry up. So.
Yeah, it's interesting having to, somebody's coming out to meet you. Like, I'm sure they're thankful, but like, they probably don't have the understanding of like your finite time. Like you said, there's so much time you spend in the air. You have certain down periods. You've got fueling. The environment's messing with you, and you're like, no. I don't think you understand. I need you to get whatever things that you think is necessary to get you out of here now.
Now, yeah.
And they're rushing and scrambling.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know the other thing you have to consider is, like, I think I know I have the easiest job on the whole crew. Mm-hmm. I mean, we go down, we gather the people up and stuff, but the mental concentration that the pilots have to do. So we're flying 60 Lima models, okay? So it's steam gauges. The newer versions out there, which the Maryland Guard I don't think has yet, they have like auto hover capability where if you want to hover hold for a while, you hit a button and it just GPS holds you there.
Oh,
you know,
wow. Okay.
So you can kind of move out of the way a little bit and just wait. These pilots are flying the whole time.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes they would do an orbit just to kind of keep it easier on themselves.
Yeah.
But some of our hoist missions, I mean, it's really tight holes that these guys are holding this hover, and it's 30 minutes.
Your whole body's just tense hanging on to that.
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, it's very minor stuff, and they're trying to triangulate their positions, looking right, looking left, kind of trying to find a spot. And when the crew chief makes the call, like, hold, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how it works. The crew chief has got his head out the door, and he's looking at what the hoist is going down to, and he's making the calls of the pilot, because the pilot can't see us.
Yeah.
He can only see forward and out 90 degrees to the right.
Okay.
They can't look directly below the helicopter.
Right, sure.
So he's just waiting on whatever the crew chief is telling him.
Yeah.
So the crew chiefs, you know, those guys are working like crazy and focusing like crazy to hold this thing where it needs to be. So it's really important that us as the rescue techs understand what those guys are really, they're working their butts off.
Yeah.
You know, just trying to concentrate and not lose this thing.
Mentally and physically just completely smashed, I bet, by the end of these days.
Well, that's why they have required hard
Downtime.
stops.
Yeah.
Like we had to ask for two extensions just to get home.
Oh, jeez.
So because I think it's like 8 hours a day they're able to fly, and they're able to ask for an additional like 2 hours, and then like it's a hard stop. That's military rules. Like,
you are done here.
Yeah, you can't, because it's not like you're flying straight and level. I mean, you were flying in
up and over
and uneven terrain. You're constantly maneuvering the whole time.
Yeah.
And these guys are they were studs, man. It was awesome to work with these guys.
Yeah.
I'd fly anywhere with those guys.
Top of their game, man.
Yes.
That's so cool.
And they use their the HART team as kind of they select their people for that too.
Yeah.
Not every pilot that flies with them is qualified.
Yeah.
and you know, rightfully so, because the amount of concentration is
for
impressive.
sure.
The other thing was as the time went on, like day 3 and on, deconfliction of the airspace, huge. That's
okay.
when I say every helicopter in the world showed up.
Okay.
It
Once
was like
the
an air
storm
show.
was out, about 48 hours passed.
Yeah, it's about 72.
Okay.
And that's when like every airport you landed at had people everywhere.
Okay.
I mean, I pull my numbers up here while I'm talking to you, but we were flying for 2 days, where we were one of the few assets in the air.
Yeah, sure.
But then you get so I'm gonna pull up the numbers real quick.
You get a good break.
Yeah,
now,
so
and then everybody's ramping up.
All our rescues were done in the first 3 days.
Okay.
We did 5 on day 5. We had no rescues on day 4. That was other missions. We were doing insertions and stuff.
Okay.
But they turned out to not to be like rescues.
Got it.
And day 5, we did 5 people out of a mountain north of Asheville. But most of our work was the first 3 days. And when that third day showed up, every airplane or helicopter in the region was coming in these airports. I mean, that's when the cavalry showed up.
Wow.
We rolled into Asheville for gas one time, and we had landed there the previous day for fuel. And before, it was just Chinooks, Blackhawks, Lakotas, a couple police helicopters and stuff. Mm-hmm. And, man, day 3, civilian helicopters were everywhere. The big military showed up.
Okay.
So you saw them guys coming in. There was a C-17 on the ramp unloading stuff. And then every private plane was bringing in supplies. That was neat to see.
That's cool, yeah.
Like all these, private entities were bringing in supplies to every airport. Like small planes were loaded to the brim with food, water, and diapers and all that, and clothing and stuff. So we come in the ramp at Asheville, and there's 2 PJ-60s from the Air Force, and those are the really nice helicopters.
Okay.
Like they got all the sensors on them. They have the in-flight refueling probe. Like they look fancy.
Yeah, yeah.
And like they're clogging up where we were just trying to slip in there because we needed gas, and we had a mission pending, which was the only thing.
Wow.
So
right.
there was nowhere to park. And so the pilots were asking, "Hey, the Air Force guys, can you guys slide up a little closer so we can fit in there?" And they did. And I mean, the crazy part is the response is, I think it wasn't declared a Title 10 response, which gets you like active duty military.
Okay.
I think that has to.
Oh, wow.
That's like a presidential thing.
Yeah, right.
So like those guys landed, and they were like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" I'm like, "Dude, it's been nonstop for 3 days." I'm like, "Really? We're just waiting on orders. Like, they got to give us something." So we have another mission pending.
Right. Like, can you get out of our way so we get fuel?
Yeah, and in the fuel truck, he's got a list of military and local entities and all the private guys all trying to get gas.
Yeah.
Finally, I just jumped in front of him. We waved them down like, "Hey, we got a mission pending. Can you fill us up real quick?" "Oh, yeah.
That's cool.
But it's just
funny. It sounds like you're talking about a Walmart parking lot, but you're talking about like fields of helicopters from all different agencies.
I got videos on my phone. I'll show you when we're done. And it was like, I think I saw every make and model. It was cool because I'm a big airplane guy.
Yeah.
And like everybody's just trying to help. And
yeah, that's cool.
It was neat. The one of the cool missions I thought was the end of day 3. Mm-hmm. We knew it was going to be our last one. We had done quite a few that day. I'm looking at my numbers here. Like day 3 was 27, actually 28 folks total rescued that day. But the last 5 were pretty interesting. It was like a campground area up in this valley.
Okay.
A lot of the landslide and the mudslides took out a lot of the structures. But this got called in, and we see this dry creek bed that looks like it was new, so it just created. And there was a community center there with a pool. And so we get overhead, and it was my turn to go. So come over station, and get down there, and I look up, and there's like a log cabin, and there's a bunch of people in a log cabin, and a rescue guy walks up to me. He had called it in. And this guy hiked up this mountain by himself and made the call, apparently. And I said, "Oh, how many you got?" And he said somewhere along the line of like 16.
Jeez.
And I knew like we didn't have the fuel for that.
Yeah, right.
And we were up against the time clock too. So I radioed back up there, and Ski said, "Well, just ask how many are critical."
Yeah.
And so roger that. And He said 5, and it was 2 elderly people. One couldn't walk, another injured elderly person, and then a pregnant mom with a 2-year-old.
Wow.
So those were the ones where like couldn't. The guys like, we can't make it another night because we didn't know if we weren't coming back for him. We were going to call it in to somebody else.
Yeah, you were maxed by that point.
We just didn't know if we had another asset available to come help these folks out. So I said, we'll come back for you first thing in the morning for everybody else, or they may come back overnight. So just hunker down. So the 5 folks, this is kind of one of our issues we had was the previous day we talked about what do we do with kids because they don't fit in the seats real well. And you don't want to put a little kid in the seat by himself because it's a little bit easier to put a big person in the seat. They don't fit the harness real well.
Yeah.
So our plan was if you have kids, they're our last hoist. We'll bring them up in the basket. We'll leave them in the basket and then secure the basket in the cabin that way.
Okay.
To the floor.
All right.
So that was my plan. Well, the first person comes up is a 90-year-old woman with a catheter and everything else, and she can't walk. I got to get her out to this creek bed. So I just scooped her up, picked her up, put her in a basket. I'm like, oh, good, they'll handle it. Well, we send her up, and like time's going by and time's ticking, and I'm like, why isn't the basket coming out the door? I got her husband here, ready to go next.
Yeah, let's go.
And they were like, we're having trouble getting her out of the basket because like that Coast Guard basket's tough to get in and out of, especially in a helicopter.
Yeah.
And we didn't consider it, I guess, in our what are we going to do when we have somebody who can't really move. And they struggled to get her out of it, they said, and get her in a seat, which they ended up doing eventually.
Yeah, yeah.
But it burned up a lot of fuel.
Sure.
So then get the older gentleman in, the injured lady, we thought might have been a litter. I said, can you bend your leg enough? Because she had her arm was in a sling, her leg was bandaged. I said, are you able to get in this basket? She said, I think I can. So sent her up, and then the mom, and I was getting ready to do one more hoist, and then Ski says, hey, we're bingo on fuel. You got to hurry up. I said, well, I'll come up with this last one. So I loaded the mom and a kid in, and I rode on the hook we have an auxiliary connection. Just came up, and I guess it was so short on fuel that when we got to the LZ at the high school, they said, everybody stay in, we're shutting down real quick. So I guess we were on fumes.
Oh, wow.
They didn't want to leave it spinning while we were waiting to get her into the ambulance and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we hopped over and went right to Asheville and fueled up before we went home. But
man, but you got the pregnant mom, and was it her kid?
We did, yes.
Yeah. But that was the last one out.
The last one there.
That's crazy.
I mean, and I was like, they're coming back for you. I don't know when. I said, if not, we'll be there the next morning.
So you had to do that a few times, right?
Like
having that conversation of like, hey, I'm leaving you right now.
Well, so there was a couple times where I know Tim went down for this one, and it was a actual aerial landing, so we didn't have to hoist.
Yeah.
We sat down, and Tim was going to go talk to the person because there's people to get out of there. But while we were on station air, they called us in for another hoist mission, and says we'll send another helicopter that doesn't require a hoist to get these folks out of here.
Okay.
So they would just pass off the mission to somebody else. He left a couple people. I know there was one time we did we landed in this church parking lot in Chimney Rock, and these 3 folks that Tim hiked up to get them. And when he left, we'd all intents and purposes, we're going to grab these people and put them in the helicopter and take them away. So Tim's up there talking to him, and then I hear on the ICS, Will goes, we got a hoist mission, which ended up being that one that I just told you about.
Okay.
But they're like, get a hold of Tim and tell him that there's a Lakota. We called in a Lakota that was about 2 miles away coming into the area. Mm-hmm. So we'll get those 3 people. And Tim's like, they started crying when I told him, like, I have to leave, but there's another helicopter coming.
I promise you.
Yeah, because that's what it was. We've been waiting for 3 days.
Yeah.
And
so that was my next question is, what is, when you have to have that conversation with these people, like, hey, listen, we got to leave. We'll be back the next day, or there's somebody else coming. What was that response? Because you said so these people are crying. Like, what? I can't imagine. Yeah, some of these people have been waiting for days.
I wasn't there with that situation for Tim. In that mission I was just talking about, I didn't have to have that conversation with the people. Mm-hmm. Just had with the rescue guy, and I said, "Here's the deal." Okay. Yeah. So like he relayed the message.
Yeah.
You saw the guys our age stick around and send their wife and kids off, and you're like, they hug and kiss them goodbye. You're like, well, man, I hope you make this, buddy.
Yeah, it's tough
because you're pretty isolated out here. But I mean, a lot of those folks grew up there. They'll find a way. I hope.
Yeah. I'd imagine they're pretty resilient. At least they know the woods and the area and the environment
Yeah.
somewhat.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where you're getting your drinking water from, but, you know, a case of water only lasts so long, you know.
How are people managing that? So with their no food, water, electricity,
So that,
or I guess whatever they had in their homes, if it wasn't destroyed.
That's where it was really impressive. You saw so many folks come in and help.
Yeah.
I can tell you for a fact that the 47 guys were working their tail off.
Yeah.
I mean, they were working before we got in, and there was a bunch of Chinooks, and those guys were running pallets of food and water out, taking off and flying into the areas that these makeshift LZs, these community centers, firehouses, and just dumping stuff out there and let the locals get it out to the people.
Nice.
I don't know what, you know, you always worried about somebody hoarding stuff, but a couple areas that we flew in, like in the morning, we'd get a text while the pilot's doing their briefing, like all right, go with a heavy loadout, food and water.
Yeah.
So Tim, Mike, and Ski and myself, we'd go get the food and water. Crew chiefs are prepping the aircraft, and we'd get the gator from the guard. We'd take it and fill it up with stuff and load the aircraft up. And when we're flying into the area to work, there was different LZs. We just drop and then dump all the stuff out. Mm-hmm. And then throughout the course of the day, you'd be flying over or something like, oh, down there's the field by Batcave. We left, 10 cases of water, 10 cases of food, and there's 4 cases left. So people realize that there's a supply coming in.
Oh, neat. Okay. When you say food, are you talking just like MREs?
MREs, yeah. Boxes of low sodium MREs. That's what's said on the box. Well, they won't get high cholesterol. But that's what we were able to provide. But there's so many other volunteer relief groups that were just bringing all kinds of stuff out. I mean, every airport that we landed in, even the small ones, they had like this one we landed in the north of just kind of between Hickory and Asheville, and like near Boone, had small planes, little single engine planes were coming in. There's a whole line of them lined up, and they're filled to the brim with food, and they're dumping them into a hangar. There's a group collecting the stuff, and then there's people with trailers and stuff driving out. I mean, there was so much work being done from like all levels of people.
Yeah.
I had church groups and everything.
A lady I have connected with, Jess Letourneau, so shout out to her. She's out of Baltimore. She's been on the podcast. She and her husband were down there just vacationing, got stuck. I think they were relatively unscathed, but then stayed just to help, and they just showed up, I think, to one of the firehouses and basically did that, just helped distribute food. So it's interesting to see from all levels of government to include the local community and even people just on vacation, like, all right, well, we're here now, so what can we do to help? So it's cool to see people band together like that.
It restores your faith in humanity. In the case of like today's world where everything's so divided some ways and politically and all that kind of stuff, it was really nice to see. It doesn't matter. Like, that's what it was frustrating because I had some encounters with people like, oh, there's government's not here helping. They're not doing this. I'm like, what do you think we're doing? We
are part of the government right now. And
it says U.S. Army on the side of the helicopter, buddy. Like, and we've been here since Saturday, and these folks are just showing up and are crying the blues. That's the kind of the problem with the media is the narrative gets sent out there.
Yeah.
And, I had a few folks that I met that I wasn't real happy with. But if you look at the greater picture of things, it didn't matter if you were military, FEMA, state, local, Podunk Fire Department, or church group, or just a volunteer coming in and say, I want to help. Like tree crews, road crews, electricians. Like, they're all just flooding into the area. And that was really cool to see. That's it's nice because those folks needed a lot of help. I mean, it's...
Well, I mean, still to this day. Yeah, I was telling you, earlier that one of my buddies was down there from another organization, and I mean, the amount of death that they had to see and deal with was insane. He said that they're still going to be digging out people and probably bodies for weeks, months on end. The restoration process, as you said, is just going to be months, maybe years, and like you said, it rerouted the river, right? You hear about this, you have these 100,000-year storms, and it literally changes the entire landscape and geography. That's insane.
Yeah, I know, like Jeff was talking to him, and I know Yak as well. Those guys were searching rivers. They were taking HR dogs, and like there's these massive piles of debris, strainers, and these are like whole trees just piled up.
Yeah.
And they would get a hit, the dog would smell something, and they'd have to disassemble the whole root ball of this mess. Yeah. And they're cutting it up and moving stuff out. I mean, the log jams from like all the river debris. I mean, it looked like you can walk on it for a quarter mile.
Yeah.
I mean, Lake Lure, and it's coming through Chimney Rock, I mean, there was a debris field that it looked like you could just walk across the river because there's so much stuff there. Wow. You know, housing debris, trees, you know, just everything.
Chunks of roadway, anything. Vehicles, I'm sure.
It's wild. I mean, and you think about it, like, I think we had the best perspective because we were looking down on it. But like then you think about it, like my job is to get people out and move them to safety, right?
Right.
But there's other people's job is to actually go in there and have to dig through that, you know, and clear it and make sure there's nothing. If a dog hits and the dogs are credible, like they're gonna have to dig through and sift through all this stuff. I mean, that's hard
a whole
job.
other level of work.
Yep. Yeah. And that's what like a lot of your FEMA USAR teams were doing.
Yeah.
You know, the state teams, the local fire department, and those guys were all working together. You know, and of course FEMA gets a bad name. I don't know if there were problems or because I wasn't part of that.
Yeah.
But I know that the guys that were working on that were working their butts off.
Sure.
You know, and having to you know, crawl through this stuff and disassemble these root balls and debris balls and just try to see if there's anybody in there, you know?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. There's a lot. Those guys on the ground were working their butts off too. So, you know, you got to give a lot of those responders and organizations a lot of credit. And it sounds like, talking to Yak, that like there was some animosity with some groups, but once they realized like, hey buddy, we're all on the same team. You know, the problem is you can't vet everybody. You know, somebody goes, I'm here to help. I'm like, well, what can you do?
Yeah.
And as a trained rescue guy, I mean, you can take his word for it, but it might bite you because he might not be capable. You know, at least the guys you know that are with you, you know their capabilities. So I guess that's a struggle with any disaster.
Yeah, I've talked about that before on here. No matter what level or tier you're at, there's always going to be the bell curve of human performance, right? So even when you talk about like MARSOC or Navy SEALs, they have the bell curve within their own organization of the top performers and the ones that are like, yeah, you just really don't cut it for us, but you made it in. You know, every organization has that. World Series baseball teams, Super Bowl champions, like they all have their bell curve. And I'm sure that's no different here. And then you overlay multiple states, multiple organizations, there's going to be a bell curve of human performance and capability. Sometimes it works out to your benefit, and then other times you're just like, man, I could really use somebody else, but you just don't know sometimes. And sometimes you just need the hands. You just need, horsepower. So
one of the cool parts was when prior to the whole storm, this is just rostering, when John was making a roster, when he told me Tim was going to be the rescue tech. Tim is a really good swimmer.
Yeah.
Like he's an older guy. Like I don't even know how old he is, but he's older than me. But man, he's a beast in the water.
Yeah.
And it's I knew that no matter what, and he's got so much experience down on the river team in Montgomery County. I mean, they spend all their days in the summer, it seems like, making rescues out of the what's that called? The Billy Goat Trail area of the Potomac.
Yeah.
So like he's on the water constantly. So he has all that experience. Mike Ski out of Baltimore County, like he teaches with Mike Berna on Rescue 3. They're Mid-Atlantic Rescue guys, and they teach swiftwater rescue and swiftwater boat ops. And so there's a lot of guys that I knew I was going to have with me. Yeah. That no matter what, like these guys were squared away.
Yeah.
They have a huge knowledge base. Ski's job as the team leader is if we're inserting in, if something changes, let's say we're doing a water rescue, which I told you we didn't end up doing anything in the water, but should we had to do that, like he's our guy in the aircraft telling the crew, like, you got to do it here. Something changed. This is what these guys are doing. Because there's no safety in the helicopter world. Like, you think about the tiers of rescue, like Hilo is your last go-to. It's because you couldn't do it with boats or land-based stuff or even rope systems. Like it's one of those deals where it's like, reach, throw, row, go, helo, right?
So that's a good point.
With rope systems, you have this huge built-in safety factor. Like the ropes are super strong, the hardware's really strong. With the hoist on a helicopter, its working load is like 600 pounds. Okay, its braking strength is like 1,200. So you have 2 to 1 if you have 2 people on it, basically.
Yeah, right.
And there's no safety line, and it's very easy. I mean, you think about it, it's about the diameter of like it's narrower than that cord. Yeah, it's small, and you can shock load it easily. You can foul it easily.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. It's higher risk. So having the knowledge base with the guys, like I said, Ski and Tim.
Sure.
Like I knew that if I was in the water and Tim was with me, like if anybody's going to get me, it's Tim.
Yeah.
But he can swim like a fish, and I know I can swim like a fish too.
Yeah, nice.
So it's I'm like, we got each other's back, and Ski's going to be looking out for us up there in a helicopter, telling the crew like, hey, come get these guys.
Yeah.
And of course the pilots and crew chiefs are just, like I told you, man, they're studs.
Yeah. No, that's amazing.
I wasn't worried about them at all.
I feel like to be in that line of responsibility, you got to be pretty top notch to fill those roles.
Well, we have the team requirement. Like you've got to have 5 years of water rescue experience before you can even apply.
Okay.
So, I mean, now that everybody knows about us, if they ever opened it up and had like like, hey, who wants to join? There'd probably be hundreds of people wanting to get on there, and I wouldn't blame them at all.
Oh yeah, it's an amazing job. Something I really have a keen interest in and nerd out on is like maydays and close calls. Whether it was your team or like other teams that you were working with, was there anything like that went down during any of the operations?
So, there were some damaged helicopters, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Probably way more on the civilian side. Our last mission that we did hoist-wise was on day 5, and that was a civilian helicopter that took off heavy and kind of settled hard into the ground, and apparently damaged his skids and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there was so much going on. The people that had never done that kind of work before were putting their little Robinson helicopters in places. I mean, these are little 2-seaters and 4-seaters, and I mean, they're doing stuff that they've probably never done before. I've heard stories of guys going, yeah, we did this, and it was kind of iffy. Talking to the guys at the FBOs at the airports, and they're like, yeah, that was a little iffy there. I've never done that before.
Yeah.
But kudos to them for trying to help, But that last one, it was an organization that had hiked up this mountain to get these 2 older folks and their dog out. Was it 2 or 3? I don't remember the number, but they couldn't get them down to their helicopter. The roads was just not passable, especially with the kid. So they called in for a hoist, and the Lakota got on station, and the Lakota, which is a smaller helicopter, tried to get in there, and they said the winds and the altitude were too much. They said call in a Black Hawk. So we happened to be in the area, and we had just taken off. We'd filled up we had a reserve tank in the back of the cabin, which gives us another hour and a half of fuel. So we can fly 3.5 hours, on fuel.
You said 3.5?
That's if we're not hovering. But yeah, it's about 3.5 hours. So you're flying straight 3.5. But so we took off heavy. We're fully loaded down, and when they called us in, we get on station, and I know it was Will and Brian were the 2 pilots, and they're like, hey, everybody's got to get out. So Tim goes down first, and then I go down, and then Mike Ski comes. They send Ski out too to lighten the helicopter up. So when it gets into its hover, they can actually hoist and hold the hover and not be overloaded.
Oh wow!
Because like I said, the helicopter works harder when it's hovering.
Yeah.
So just the conditions and stuff. So it was kind of a really tight spot. I mean, it's like trying to put a basket in on that little rug area next to us, and there's trees around you, and there's a house, and we were sending up a 1 by 1. And we're like, all right, send up one more, send up one more, and eventually we were able to recover everybody because we burned off enough fuel that they could hold it.
Oh, it actually.
But that was a long evolution because so like he even said, he goes, I was getting a little punchy up front because I'm trying to hold this hover the whole time, and it's a long time to be like.
Yeah, just locked in
in on the stick. Right. And like I said, man, those pilots and crew chiefs.
Unreal.
Awesome.
Unreal.
Yeah.
And then 3.5 hours of flight time. I mean, you're fueling up multiple times a day then.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Just out and back.
You're never pushing it like, well, a couple times we were low on fuel, I told you, but like they'd be, okay, we don't have enough fuel to go perform another mission. So we go top off and stuff. But yeah, probably 2-3 times a day filling up.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, because also we got that transit in, so it's 45-minute flight in, 45-minute flight home. So a couple times, like we finished our mission, but we had to land to top off to go home. Or to get fuel to go home because we couldn't make it. But it was kind of nice to know that you had at least a bed to sleep in, and a decent meal.
So that's something else I've heard is it seems like if you guys were far enough out, you weren't too bad, but there are some teams that are in the environment where even if they're staying at a hotel, they don't have maybe electric, they don't have running water, right? So they're, so to speak, roughing it themselves.
So the FEMA teams have the ability to pitch tents and like create a base of operation. It's a lot of work for them to do it, but like they're self-sufficient for 14 days. Mm-hmm. We're spoiled in the aviation side of things because like we don't have to sleep in it. We can fly into it like we did and fly out of it. And kind of get back to we'd stop for breakfast at Sheetz every morning, and then go to Outback at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night for dinner,
Yeah.
We ate pretty well dinner wise. Lunches were on the go.
Sure.
Like you snack what you could and drink what you could. But every airport has what they call an FBO, a fixed base operator that provides the services for the airport, like fuel, tie down service, all that kind of stuff. So there were snacks in a lot of them. Asheville, the first couple of days had no power. So that place was kind of a wreck. But some other places we landed at a lot had power. So you could get a Chick-fil-A was at one. It's nice to get a sandwich.
Yeah, people are dropping stuff off.
And then they eventually put out a FARP, which I'm not sure the acronym, but it's a forward fuel site for military aviation where we don't have to shut down. We can hot fuel.
Oh, nice.
Everybody gets kicked out of the helicopter. You stand off to the side.
Okay.
And then they bring the fuel hose in while the engine's running and hook it up.
Gotcha.
So that once they established that, we were able to kind of turn over a little faster.
Yeah.
But that came after our mission or the op tempo slowed.
Yeah. Okay.
So after day 5, the rest of our missions were kind of like large area searches and stuff. Mm-hmm. We got tasked with flying a couple IST guys, incident management team members that would kind of survey the area and get an idea of what they're operating, and then they deploy. Their job is deploy resources and kind of manage these areas.
Yeah, okay.
Or what needs to be done. But they wanted aerial surveys of like the river area where the folks' houses were washed away.
Sure.
And so we were all over the place. I mean, we were running Cal Topo, if you're familiar with that program.
Yeah.
So even the folks back at MD were watching us every day. Like, what are these guys doing? And I would run it on my phone, change the color for each day. You could see our flight plan and stuff.
Oh, neat.
So we were booking, 500 plus miles a day of flying.
Wow.
And, a lot of that slow hovering, trying to maneuver.
Yeah, right.
But later on in the week, we would fly over areas and kind of come in low, and they'd hear us coming. Mm-hmm. And then we'd circle again real low, and these people come out and look, and we're like, thumbs up, thumbs down. What do you need?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it became after, because we were basically a rescue helicopter from the rest of the time on. They said, like, can carry some food and water, but we want to keep you available in case a rescuer gets hurt, needs to get evacuated, or a citizen is still stuck or gets hurt, needs to be evacuated. So we were kind of a rescue bird for the state in that respect.
Yeah, very cool.
They held on to us for the full 10 days. But the Carolina guys were still working when we left.
Sure.
I think they had like 6 helicopters. And
just running.
That was also a really cool part, was getting to network with those guys, figure out what works for them. They are a response-ready asset. So, like, they actually use those guys any given day of the week sometimes.
Nice.
So, like a mountain rescue, whatever, they can call them in to do it. Us back in Maryland, we're kind of like a major disaster thing. We kind of the state police handle all the day-to-day stuff.
Right.
So, but they don't do like in-water stuff. The police don't.
Yeah, that's all on you.
Yeah, it was a wild couple days, man. The first few.
Yeah, no kidding. Is there I know we're starting to get towards the back end of this. Is there any other of the rescue missions? I know we talked about a lot of them. Out of these 83 that are sticking out to you that we didn't cover that are worth mentioning?
Well, I think the ones that I told you about were the ones that stick out the
big
most
ones.
to me. A couple of them, I had to look through our photos because they kind of all run together.
For sure, yeah.
But like I said, we had a really good crew relationship. That was one of the things. I've worked with Will and Terry and Steve before in Texas on a aviation exercise we went down there for. So I kind of have an idea how they like to work.
Yeah.
Everybody had a great attitude. The 47 guys, like they were their own group.
Yeah.
But they did a lot of work, man, moving supplies, stuff in and out of there.
Yeah.
It was really, great to represent Maryland in that respect.
Yeah,
Because like they were talking about us, like, man, you guys are killing it. And like, just keep sending us, And, it was great for the team, great for morale.
Sure.
And I think the coordination of the crew was as good as it could be.
Yeah.
It was great for the opportunity. And like I said, having guys that you can work with.
I think it can't be understated. Like your all's cohesion, but your willingness to maintain that type of operational tempo, it just can't be understated. 10 days of work and those first 3 to 5, I mean, just high tempo. And then you guys are just firing on all cylinders and just mentally and physically just slammed.
Well, I think you have to, at least what I did was I kind of looked at it like, well, this was your chance, I mean, I'm a short timer. I got 6 years to go and I'm done, know.
Yeah.
I'm going to retire with 30 years, but I realized like I may never get this opportunity again.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Like I have a home to go home to.
Yeah.
And as long as those pilots are willing to spin that engine up, I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
That's awesome, man.
So
I love that.
It's like, and of course you get all the support from the guys back home. Hey, what you guys doing? And then, Chief Wallace texting me every day. Hey, what's going on? I'm like, still flying, and the guys from I work with are hitting me up and, you just know that everybody's counting on you trying to do your best and
sure,
not make a mistake. That's kind of one of my big fears as we got down there. And I told Tim, I was like, hey, just so you know, take your time getting in and out of the aircraft because if we foul this cable, we might be done.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it's kind of easy to do just because of the way the operation works. I'm like, we got to take care of our equipment, make sure we're not wrecking things, doing stuff, in a hurry. But
what does that look like when you're coming off of flights? You have your mandatory stand down time. Like I'm just imagine like this military setting where you're just, you're eating and you got to shower, do all that kind of stuff. But even before that happens, you got to get the bird and all your equipment back in working order, right? Making sure it's at least up to operational readiness.
So I don't know if I would say it's not, maybe it's not what you might have envisioned. Each morning, the pilots go away for like a half hour to 45 minutes, and they're going through their crew brief.
Yeah.
We come out, the crew chiefs are on tiny aircraft. We're kind of cleaning the cabin out. We're stocking the water and snacks. We're making sure the rescue adjuncts are good. We're loading food and water. When we get done for the night, we kind of button the cabin up. We tie the aircraft down. They tie the aircraft down. Mm-hmm. The pilots go and, they tidy up the front, and then they go into their debrief with their L&O, the liaison officer, and talk about what they've done and pass that on. It's not as formal as you may think.
Yeah.
I mean,
these are pretty resilient.
Yeah, I mean, these guys fly this thing every day. It's their job, but I mean, you still have to be really careful because if there's any issues with the aircraft or you did something that could damage your gear, like it's not we have a place we can get replacements easily.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Luckily, that base was a Black Hawk base, so they had parts. Which was, but if we needed something, we might have to fly it back down from Maryland.
Yeah.
So like they could send a helicopter or a C-12, which is a Beech King Air from Maryland, and bring stuff down. We had personnel kind of coming and going. That's why we had a rotation of pilots.
Oh, right.
Stuff. Yep. But for us, a lot of the talk was we kind of tie the helicopter up and tie it down and get in the van and then drive back to the hotel. All right, 15 minutes, meet in the lobby. So we shower real quick, jump in the van, and then go to dinner at like 10 o'clock at night. And then over dinner is where you kind of discuss, hey, what happened here? Or, what you guys see here and stuff. There is I guess a kind of a funny mission was Tim and Steve, the crew chief. Three of us, they drop us off in this orchard, and I wasn't on comms yet that day. It was like the second day. They dropped Tim and I off, and then Steve jumps out. And he's like, "There's a house up the hill." It's like, okay. Well, the helicopter's still sitting down. Well, Tim and I start running up this hill, and we don't know how far we're running.
Yeah.
And it's hot, and it's pretty steep. It's a long hill. I'm like, man, how much longer has this got? We're wearing all our gear.
Yeah.
Well, next thing you know, Steve comes running up the hill, but he took off his harness, he took off his jacket, he took off his helmet, he took off his gloves. It's just him in his T-shirt. So he's running, he catches up to us. I'm like, geez, where's all your gear? He's like, oh, it's down halfway down the driveway. I'm like, it's like a mile-long driveway. We're running up this hill. So Tim's like, what are we going to do about his gear? I'm like, I don't know, because we can't like lower down to where it's at because it's under the canopy of trees.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll run down to the hill, I'll get his stuff, and then I'll get back in the helicopter, and then I'll come back up to where you guys are. So Tim's like, yeah, that's a good idea. So I run down the hill, I grab all Steve's up, put it all in a carabiner, call over the hook, they pick me up and go. Well, come to find out, Steve makes it to the house first. I would say they're probably in their 60s, but it's a bunch of women that were on a high school reunion like trip.
Oh, man.
There's like 8 of them, I think, or 8 or 9 of them. And Steve comes walking in his T-shirt and military pants on. And like, oh, the entertainment. So Tim catches up. And he gets in there. And I'm like, what do you got? He's like, it's going to be 8. I'm like, good. Start sending them up. He goes, well, about that. And we're sitting there waiting. For seems like forever. And he's like, I'm trying my best to make this fast, Chris, but you got to give me time. And I'm like, what's the holdup? He goes, you'll see. So we start sending the basket, and up one by one, they keep coming up. And we're like, I understand. They were trying to pack every little thing because they never knew who was going to come get them.
Yeah, right.
And when.
Right.
And they were just enjoying their time they had stuck in this house with limited supplies for as long as it could. And of course, some of them coming up, they're terrified because they're in a loud helicopter. Others are filming us like, yeah.
Because they have the time of their life.
Yeah. And Tim comes up and he's smiling, and Steve comes up and he's smiling. And I'm like, I understand, buddy.
I get it now, right?
Yeah, it was cool. We kept teasing Steve like, yeah, you showed up. And they're like, who hired the military stripper? Yeah.
I love that. I'm sure that's going to be a story they tell for a long time.
Yeah, and during a debrief goes, Steve, that's the last time you get out of the aircraft. Yeah, so it was cool. Just one of those things you can laugh about. But we drop them off and they're waving, giving you hugs, and just very grateful. So it kept you going,
Oh, for sure. I can imagine just mission after mission like that. Just the sense of gratitude has got to be stroking at such a high level. That's so cool.
That's one of the things I'll take from it is we did good. But it's a team, man. It's everybody has to do their job.
Yeah.
That's the big thing about it. Just like in the fire service, you count on everybody to do their job. Mm-hmm. And if somebody doesn't do their job, somebody else has got to pick up the slack, hopefully. Yeah. Or you start seeing shortfalls happening.
Right. There's some liabilities.
Yep. So it was awesome. Great 10 days. Glad I could be part of it. Yeah. I tell you, the imagery though of some folks, just social media, Monday morning quarterback and all that stuff. And I know, I told you before we went on air, the one guy went on Sean Ryan's show, and he was, I think his arm got tired. He was patting himself on the back so much. I'm like, buddy, nobody knew who you were. You just can't show up in an airplane and go, I need a Black Hawk to go rescue people.
Yeah, right.
There are channels.
Yeah.
He said he was from the Florida State Guard. I assumed it was a National Guard. I've never heard of the State Guard before. Apparently, it's a new group they formed last year.
Oh, wow.
Of for hurricane response. But okay. I mean, just showed up looking like me, an outfit on, not a uniform, just regular clothes. And I'm like, they're not going to give some random guy a Black Hawk, buddy. And then he's mouthing off on the internet. I saw when I got home to that night in the hotel. We gave him his food and water that we had left because we were going back. We were done. And I see him mouthing off, they're not giving me this, and there's nobody here doing stuff. And I'm like, I told you when I met you. I didn't say it, but I told him when I met him that day. I'm like, we've been here for 3 days, man. Like, I can show you our stats.
Right. You got Cal Topo docs.
You can see it all on the imagery stuff.
Yeah.
And he was ran off, and he goes up on Fox and Friends, and I hear him on the Sean Ryan show. I'm like, this guy is all about himself. I'm like, it's a team effort from everybody.
Yeah.
You know, I told you early in the interview, it's state, local, federal, church groups. It's amazing that the response that was down there. Yeah. And of course, it's such a large area. You have so many people in this remote area. So like, you're not going to get, if you call for help, it's not going to come in 5 hours. I told you, some of these places were 3-4 days in, you know, and they're finally getting out of there.
And they're zoomed in on their one little piece of the pie. When you're talking about a whole cross section of a state, kind of 2 states.
Yes.
You know?
Oh, yeah. Unreal. I mean, the Virginia Heart was working in their state alone. So like people go, well, where was Virginia Heart there? So yeah, they were in their own state working. Yeah. I don't know about Tennessee because I don't think they have a heart team, but like they had their own stuff going on. So, and in that type of environment, you can't see forever. You can only see over the next hill. You can't see, you know, the hill's right there, and you don't know what's going on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely.
There could be 6 helicopters in that valley that you know nothing about. Idea.
And you still have pending calls.
Yes.
You're on your mission, you still have pending calls. People are out there doing work nonstop.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
that's the unfortunate side, I feel like, of social media, and people just zoomed into their little environment. I got to get this damn cat out of here. This is Stella. She likes to rest back here. Social media is just going to do what it does, unfortunately, and I'm sure you had to deal with that. But you're sitting there in the middle of it like, no, we're doing good things.
Yeah, we're here. I mean, you can look at the stuff that the Maryland Guard posted on social media and like, hey, look at the date on it.
Yeah, right.
You can't say there's no military here. They're working. You saw they had Chinooks from like New York and it was Minnesota. And I mean, the Blackhawks, there were so many Blackhawks, they ended up kicking us off the tarmac and parking us in the grass because they had to make room for the Chinooks to come in.
Okay.
And the Lakota's the same thing. Like there's And not everything is a hoist platform. So there's Blackhawks that don't have hoists, but they're hauling food and water in constantly. You know, it's
everybody's doing something.
Everybody was, man, and that's what's getting overlooked is, you know, you badmouth them, but you don't really know because you can't see it. You know, you're in your own little world.
Yeah.
And that was kind of frustrating. I felt bad for the folks. You know, fire service. You know, post 9/11, everybody loved us, and that kind of fades.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
And now we're and sometimes not so favorable, you know, with the public.
Sure.
But it's a shame because there's a lot of people doing a lot of good stuff.
Well, yeah, I think with you telling the stories of your team, man, it's you're just one part of like this crazy infrastructure that was down there doing the good thing, and we haven't even touched on like the guys that were on the ground doing their part too. Like they're people from all over the country trying to make things happen. So
yeah,
there's a lot of good being done.
The guys on the ground, man, if you get a chance to ever talk to some of the USAR guys, I mean, they see things a little differently than I got to see it because they're kind of focused on their area. But I mean, they're doing some hard work, man.
No, I'd love to talk to like Yak and some of the other guys that were down there.
I don't want to do that. I'm getting older, man. I'm like, that doesn't look like fun at all.
Now that you are, you've had some time to reflect on it, do you see how this might change any operations or culture for the Maryland Heart team for the missions that we do?
So one of the big benefits is we've done drills in the past couple of years, like state aviation drills. And the whole point of it is to identify what the capability is with the different groups, state police, NRP, us, and where we all kind of fall in line should there be a disaster. So it was kind of an issue with the Key Bridge. I was there for that with the Heart team. We didn't do any rescues. We just did aerial search of the river west of the bridge.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of everybody shows up, but what is everybody doing? What can you account for? Yeah. So I think on the planning side of things and the execution of the operations, they're working on it. That's
trying to make the Heart team more robust and like more readily accessible.
Well, not just the Heart team; it's all the aviation assets. Like what role were you going to assume?
Yep.
Who are you answering to? That's way above my pay grade. But execution wise, we learned a lot, and we're hoping to get some more funding from the state. Like maybe MD has some extra funding because a lot of what we're using, I mean, we're using, the military owns the harnesses, most of them.
Yeah.
All our helmets and PPE are all bought by us or the jurisdiction that sponsors you.
Yeah.
So like Howard, they supply some of the stuff for us, our dry suits and stuff. But hopefully to get a more unified, I guess you could say, cache of stuff. Because some guys are wearing OpsCore helmets, some guys are wearing Team Wendy helmets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the comms that go with it, like we don't even have those. The comms that we use on the mission are,
like you said, you're being a middleman between different comms.
Yeah, and like we're using the military headsets. I took one. The Chinook guy says, "Hey, we got an extra one."
Oh,
but
nice.
the problem is the Chinook headset couldn't plug into the Blackhawk ICS, so I could talk on the portable radio.
Yeah.
Like we were direct, but I couldn't talk to the pilots because there was interference. Just the way, for some reason, one was high impingement or something, and one's a low impingement type deal. So we're hoping to work through that and make the comm situation a lot better, because that's the biggest problem. Is when they'd send us off some couple of places, and I know Tim and I, later on in the week, they were inserting us to go check areas. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, we got a call from this guy. We haven't heard. Nobody's heard from him. They want to make sure he's all right. Well, you're getting lowered in these areas, and you're kind of hiking up these little cuts in the woods and stuff to these houses, and they look kind of sketchy.
Yeah, sure.
And people are defending their stuff. Mm-hmm. And when you come knocking on a door, when nobody else is around, and you might
here
be
to help.
Yeah. I grabbed a shovel and a pitchfork this one time. I'm like, all right, this is what we got, Tim. And I'm like, oh, what's the deal? One of us is gonna, hopefully run and let the guys know that, hey, we need help.
Right.
Nothing ever came of that, but that was our plan.
Yeah.
Put 2 guys in, and hopefully somebody gets away to say, hey.
Any issues of, because it's the unfortunate side of the human dynamic, any issues with like looting or any of that?
We had heard about that stuff. I didn't see any of that.
See anything personally,
it's hard because we're up in the air. But they were talking, like, Jeff will tell you stories that like places were getting looted like crazy.
Yeah.
He was talking about in the Swannanoa. We flew over Swannanoa a bunch. It's along the 40 corridor.
Okay.
But they were down in that area operating, and like stores just getting wiped out.
Yeah.
And was it Jeff or Yak was telling me the story? One of the two, because he was like, yeah, they're just stealing stuff. Unfortunately, people get desperate, and
I can understand some of it with, like, if you have a true need, like you're completely isolated and you steal a chainsaw. Okay. Like, I can be at peace with that. But if you're just stealing people's stuff because of money or value, that's a whole other side of looting,
Yeah. I know, like, they had force protection with them on the ground. So, like, they were prepared, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But that's always a problem. It was a problem in Katrina. When I was down there, I was down there with USAR, and you would see if you loot, we shoot type signs to put people up.
Right. Yeah.
And we had the Baltimore City SWAT team with us down there. So,
Jeez.
they have a force protection group that provides security, but they get spread thin too when you start operating in remote areas.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's the unfortunate side of disaster.
Yeah. Yep.
Like you said, if you need it, I understand. But if you're just trying to rob from your neighbor, that's pretty
different.
low.
That's different. Yeah,
that's low.
Yeah,
so
that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's a shame. Like I said, it brings out the best and the worst in people.
Yeah,
but there was a lot of people that
good.
Bring the good out of them. So like I said, that's what I took from it.
That's awesome.
Grateful for the opportunity, the department sponsoring us, and to do the best that we could.
Yeah,
as a team, and try to make the team better as a result of it. So
awesome.
That's the hope.
That's cool, man. No, kudos to you and your whole team with Heart, and then even just our department with the support. Like, it's there's always things that we can gripe about, but at the end of the day, we have a pretty awesome department, and we have really good people in positions, like trying to do the right thing. So, which is awesome. So
I don't know if you know all the guys that are on the Heart team from our department. It's John Zauer is our leader, representative. It's Bart Albrecht and Jeff Carl.
Okay. Yeah.
And obviously myself. But the cool part is with those 3 other guys, you could have interchanged any of us.
Yeah.
And it would have gone to same effect.
Awesome.
Because they're all really great guys.
Yeah.
So I was just grateful it was my turn.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. And I'm super grateful that you made the trip over and told me, like, spent time telling your story, man. This is super cool. I didn't have a deep understanding, and just getting this little bit of insight, man, is just, it's awesome to see the resource and just the good that you all are doing, and hopefully we'll still have the capability and resources to do these things in the future, you know.
I appreciate it. It's nice to get the Heart mission and then the notoriety out there, because that's, like I said, I'm a short timer in the grand scheme of things. But if the guys that replace me, or even the current guys that are on it for a lot longer than I am, I hope that the funding and support continues. And they can do some good things down the road, because, like I said, those guys are awesome. The guard guys are great. It's a lot of fun.
That's cool, man. Well, that's a good place as any to wrap it up. Anything we missed before we shut this thing down?
No, thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Dude, appreciate you, man. That's awesome.
Have a good one.
You too, dude.